You're live.
You want to talk or me?
No, you can talk.
All right. Let's have to stand up. Welcome the internet and George, who's probably watching. Hi, George. Did George ever watch these streams?
Yeah.
Yes. I'm Adam.
Hi.
Welcome to OLUG, October 2017. How is it possibly October already? It seems crazy.
In 2017.
2017, I'm okay with. I'll come to terms with that. It's October, I'm a little iffy on it. What's going on in the world of open source? Anything exciting? No, nothing? Anything cool going on?
I've been out of it a little bit the last month.
Been too busy with work?
Yeah. Weird stuff.
Your versions of Android are out.
Yes.
What was the thing I saw the other day that...
The Linux, the one thing I heard was that there's as many Linux machines being used by people as there are Macs.
Oh, sure, if you throw Android in there.
If you throw Chromebooks in there, if all the kids who've gone back to school, the numbers have gone straight up.
That's true. Cursing their systems because they can't run Minecraft on them.
Yep.
That is certainly, I would say that is certainly true. Yes.
It's like 5%.
I saw some article about long-term support for the newest Linux kernel. It was up to like 6 years now. Through whom, I'm not sure, but there was some guarantee made about long-term viability of the kernel itself, not just the distro, but the kernel itself.
Each main release generally has a maintainer, even after they've jumped up, it was like 2.6 had a maintainer and 3 had a maintainer, and yeah. So there's people that get assigned to do those.
Gotcha. Okay. All right.
Couldn't tell you who they were.
Yeah. All right, so let's get into it. We're going to talk about security for a little bit tonight, right? So the goal tonight is not to be a comprehensive overview of all the security issues that you possibly run into in Unix. That would take a couple weeks. We're going to talk for an hour about the basic stuff that you do post-install, okay? Hence the topic, hence the title, Security 101, securing your box after an install. Let me actually present this. And of course, this is the first question you should always ask with security. Why? Why do we care? Why are we here? Why is this a thing? Who cares? Well, the first one is kind of important because it literally can't take less than a minute for an attacker to exploit a known vulnerability, no matter what your operating system is, right? How many times have you had a user say some variation of the phrase, I'm so small and insignificant, why would anyone want to attack me, right? But that means nothing, because they're not attacking you. They're just you happen to fall under or fall in their crosshairs, right? I have my dad lay this one on me while I go, well, what do I care? They're gonna break into my system and steal my photos? No, you don't understand. They're not after your data, they're after your system, right? To do denial of service attacks. And they're after whatever information you may have stored on that system, specifically from a login standpoint, right? Reference Equifax. Distributions, now this has improved a lot over the years. I've been doing this a long time. Distributions in general don't do this a lot better than they used to, but there are still a lot of non-secure defaults that are turned on from a distribution standpoint. Because the distributions have to balance user accessibility with security, right? Security is always a balance. What's the most secure system? The system that's unplugged and turned off and set in the corner, right? You guys remember NT4? Showing my age here. Most of you are, right? NT4 achieved a security level unheard of for a commercial operating system back in the 90s. The US Army actually gives out security designations for operating systems. I don't remember the name of this one. It was like Red Book or Red something.
Yeah.
This. But only if it was unplugged from a network. That was the criteria. Not exactly a very useful system, but by God, it was secure.
Well, it's interesting that designation may not necessarily apply today.
Yeah,
with some of the air-gapped
that's a
viruses.
good point. We assume that unplugging that network cable is the be-all, end-all, right? But not necessarily the case for things like a jump that air gap.
with speakers and microphones.
Right, exactly, with audio, that's right. And of course, the last one, hopefully you're telling your users this, it's everybody's responsibility. Tell the user that has the password on the sticky note underneath their mouse pad. That doesn't count. There should be no Wi-Fi passwords, it should be open.
Okay.
All right, so I think I have seven steps. I only have 7 steps. This will be very easy. Seven easy steps. Step 1, the install. Okay. Again, this is a lot easier than it used to be. Right? Back in the day, installing Linux was super hard. You know, a lot of different stuff. We used to have meetings just to walk people through installs, right? When is the last time we had a OLEG install fest? This is 2017, right? Jeez.
9 years ago.
8 or 9 years ago? A long time, right?
Yep.
So you have to start thinking about security from the very beginning, right? I mean, ideally before you install, because you're going to decide what kind of system this is going to be, right? That's my second one. What's your use case? What's the point of this? What are you going to do with it? Well, that triggers what kind of security model you want to apply. So for the purpose of our presentation tonight, we're going to assume that you're creating a server of some sort that's going to live on the internet. Okay? So just everything we do, we're operating under that assumption. That's not normal, right? I mean, normally when we do Linux systems, it's usually on a laptop or a desktop, something for a home firewall, or maybe it's on like an AWS instance in the cloud somewhere, okay? So we're going to assume the latter. You'll also notice that when we go to our example system, we're not in the graphical front end because I'm assuming it's a server, okay? It also makes it much easier to process the output PS. So only install what you need. Don't go crazy in that package selection screen on the operating system install and say check, 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 check. No. Some distributions literally have a distribution called minimal install. Pick that one, okay? And then add stuff you need as you go. That's a much more paranoid approach to it. Remember, it's not paranoia if everybody actually is out to get you. And we're assuming from a security standpoint that that is the case, right? You have to identify what your use case is. Finally, you have to think like an attacker. Look at what those vulnerabilities are. How would I exploit this? Could this possibly be exploited? What are my open doors? We'll talk more about that as we go. Okay, so that's pretty easy. Install is an install. Install it, right? Okay. The install is done. We're going to assume that, for the sake of argument here, that you just completed an install on like an AWS instance. So it's a node out there somewhere on the internet. Probably has a publicly accessible IP address, either v4 or v6. Okay, so you can't just install it and then come back a week later and finish the config, right? That's not good. And if I could jump down to my last point here, this one. So many years ago, all my stories started many years ago. Many years ago, I was working with a sysadmin for a local ISP. And she didn't really have a lot of experience with being a sysadmin, but I walked her through how to install Red Hat something at the time, probably 7.2. That's how long ago this was, probably Red Hat 7.2. No, it was here in town. And she installed a default Red Hat 7.2 installation and then went home. Came back the next morning, it was ready. And it was actually actively doing a DOS attack on somebody. And she couldn't understand what happened. Why did she get targeted? What could she possibly have to offer? How was somebody like waiting for her? No, it was random. People are scanning all the time. I mean, we talk about the IPv4 address space, right? It's only 4 billion addresses. It's a pretty big number. But if you're scanning for open ports and vulnerabilities, it really doesn't take that long to scan through all of those. And that's what happened. She had a publicly accessible IPv4 address. The default installation had SSH enabled. It was old enough that there was a vulnerability. It was exploited. Boom, somebody's there to go. We actually looked at logs later. It took less than an hour. It was like 47 minutes after she turned that box on. Just like that. Just like that. Okay? So don't think that you're going to hide on the internet. That's not a thing. They're not targeting you. They're targeting just what you represent. Right? Of course, you can't do the install in private IP address. But no matter what. Hey, Ralph. So let's take a look at this. I mean, I think we've all probably done this, right? What I've got going here is a default installation of Linux Mint. Mint, one of the Ubuntu variants. This is 18.2. It's got RC. This is running 4.8.0. I did this install, I don't know, a month ago maybe. Right? So this is an Ubuntu-based system, right? So what's the package management tool that we use?
Yeah.
It's apt, right? Yeah, dpackage is the name of the actual tool that we use to install packages. The wrapper around that is apt, or apt-get. That's kind of the old one. I'm old, so I tend to use the old commands, right? So you can do apt-get update. This will update the local cache of the available packages on your system. It'll show you what archives you're reading from. Of course, these are the default ones. You can add additional ones. I should use the right word. It's repository, right? You can add your own. You can see all the ones I'm pulling from. And then step 2 is apt-get upgrade. Okay, and you should hopefully see a screen like this. Hey, you got all these packages upgrade. Now, you're the admin, right? The system is your responsibility. You can do whatever you want. There's all these defaults in place. There's all these accepted practices. But remember, the internet is not run by a set of laws. It's run by a set of agreements. We've all agreed to operate this way. We've all agreed to use TCP/IP, which is a certain language, right? You don't have to. Go write your own, right? There's no law that says you have to do it. We all operate under these agreements. So you as the admin do whatever you want, but the accepted practice for maintaining a system on the internet is to keep your software upgraded. Should I just do an apt-get upgrade blindly here and say yes and hope for the best? Yes. We have one vote for yes. Who else? You got 2 votes for yes. Yes, the gods of the upgrade will smile down upon you, and I promise that nothing will break when I do this. Oh, may I live in your world for at least one day. No, probably not. You probably should at least read through these, right? Hey, maybe this server is a pretty major DNS server that I run. Right? Maybe it's minor. Error in the man page. I spelled the word foo wrong. Okay, no big deal, right? Or we're changing the way pointers are handled in the 64-bit version of this software. Oh, I should probably test that on a server somewhere. Right?
Enable DNSSEC.
Yeah, there you go. Making DNSSEC required. We'll break all known previous configs. Oh, okay, you should probably test that, right? So be careful with this. You're the admin. You can do whatever you want, which means pointing that big old shotgun right at your foot and blowing the leg clean off. So I have an idea of what's going on. What I primarily look for here is kernel updates. That's the biggest one, right? Oh, am I getting a new kernel? Because of course that's going to require a reboot. Now you can jump through a couple of hoops, and there is a way to actually have a non-rebootable kernel upgrade happen. It's a pain in the butt. Don't do it. So I'm looking through this. CS certificates, that's probably good. Chromium, don't care. Some crypto stuff, GDK, probably stuff I don't need. Honestly, what this tells me right here is I've got way too much software installed on this system. All Linux Mint installed. If this is truly going to be a server living on the internet, I don't even have this stuff. Pulse Audio, right? I want to find the guy who wrote Pulse Audio.
He wrote SysMD.
Oh, that makes perfect sense. Now my hate is justified. What do we care about? libSMB client. Am I going to be making server message block connections on a server connected to the internet? I hope not. Yeah, right. So I've got way too much default. This is what tells me I've got way too much stuff installed. Okay. So I'm not going to worry about this now. But be aware of that. Now, again, don't just do that. Well, my takeaway from this for you is don't just blind it. Don't just say update, go, walk away, right? It's not Windows Update. This is stuff that actually matters. So be aware of what it's updating. Read the change log. This is really where your distribution choice is important. Because I mean, what are the differences between the distributions now? And this has been true for quite a while. I get this question a lot, you know, oh, what's your favorite distribution? I tried this, I tried this. It's all Linux. So what's the difference? Well, package management is a big one, right? We still live in a world that has 2 main package management systems. They're either D-package based, which are all doing, I should say Debian variants, right? Because which is a variation of Debian. So all the Debian-based distributions are D-package package management. Or we have RPM-based distros, right? Red Hat CentOS, SUSE. Are there RPM-based distros? Those are all my two examples. Okay, but they're big ones. There's the big ones, right? Yeah, I mean, CentOS is still, CentOS and Fedora are probably the largest two. Now, Ubuntu, I'm sure Ubuntu is something. I mean, there's others, right? Arch has its own. Gentoo has its own. I'm sure I'm missing some, right? I'm sure somebody said, you know what? Let's throw 20 years of software development out the window. I'm going to come up with the perfect package manager, and they're writing their own right now in the basement. Awesome. Go nuts, right? What's that? What's that?
It says US package management.
There
You
you
can
go.
run it on every platform.
Oh, cool. Okay.
I don't know much about it.
So
Cool.
it's a snap.
I'm sure it's a snap. I'm sure they're there, right? And then, of course, there's other ways to distribute software, right? I mean, Perl has their own software distribution system. Python has little eggs that you can solve. There's all kinds of stuff.
App image, Flatpak.
Flatpak, thank you. That's the one I was trying to think of, was Flatpak, right? So, differences in distribution we're talking about, right? How they handle package management. But the other biggest one, and this is really the reason to pick a distribution, is how they handle security and software updates. What is their support model? Because remember, this is Linux. This is open source software. This relies on maintenance from people like us. So why aren't we all just rolling our own distribution? That kind of time. I would much rather hand that off to somebody else, but only if they meet the bar on a couple of things. And one of them being timely software updates, right? This is sort of where Slackware, this is kind of why Slackware has kind of fallen to the wayside over the years. Sorry, any Slackware fans that are listening. I know you're out there, Phil. Because Slackware was kind of known as, yeah, software updates are cool, we'll look at them in a year or two, right? Or maybe Debian stable, which is why everybody and their dog runs Debian unstable. So they've taken a lot of heat from that over the years. Well, this is the reason why you pick a distribution. So Mint does a pretty good job with that. I've run this on a couple of systems at home. They keep things pretty updated. And you can always tell this when a new security vulnerability comes out. How quickly is a patch enabled? How quickly is it available? All right, so, sorry, this keeps taking over my, this keeps taking over my cursor, so I have to do this. Oh no, I minimized it.
You can't hold tab.
You're gonna talk about mandatory access controls?
At the end, I am, yes.
So I was just gonna say, if you're picking a server, Red Hat's always had by default mandatory access control.
Oh, that's a really good point. That's true. That is by default. Sorry, I have way too much. I should have closed all this stuff before. Now I lost my slides.
You want me to mute the screen real quick?
No. It was maximized, that's fine. Okay, software updates, they're a thing to do. Probably not a good idea to put apt-get update upgrade-y in your contract. That's a level of trust you probably don't want to afford, right? Now, if you're managing more than one system, of course, you say, what are we going to do? Log into 100 systems over SSH and do this manually? No, there's additional distributions that have tools that allow you to do this. The commercial ones have whole websites for this. I mean, this is why people pay Red Hat monthly fees, because they make this stuff easy. They make this multiple. Put this version on these 50 systems, right? Boom, one click on website. That's how Red Hat makes its money, right? So if that really is your situation, you're probably gonna, it's probably worth paying some money for. All right, now let's get into the nitty-gritty. You got this box up, it's running, it's on the internet. For the sake of argument, let's say it's got an IPv4 IP address. Now what? Well, we want to see what the distribution has put in the startup scripts by default. And plus, look at that first bullet. You're the admin. You better know what's going on. This is your baby. You should be able to look at any process on that system and go, yeah, I know generally what that's doing, right? Maybe not all the details, but you know why it's there. And if you don't, stop it. The system breaks, figure out why it broke, and go from there, right? I used to pride myself on the fact that our firewalls back in the day, I could do a PSA UX, and the list of processes fit on like one screen. It was like this many, it was like 30 processes.
And what was the load?
That was zero. That was it. I knew every single process around that box. I knew everything about it, and nothing else. So we should do that. So, of course, we're in kind of the tail end of the System D takeover of the world. Debian was the last holdout, and they caved a year or two ago. So I don't know of any major distribution, other than Slackware maybe, I don't know, I'm not Slack it's all a while. I don't know of any major distribution that still uses sys5 init for their startup scripts. Everybody has adopted System D, okay? If you're not familiar with System D, it is a
init replacement.
It's kind of an everything replacement. It is like a giant amoeba, or perhaps like the Borg. It has absorbed a lot of existing Linux services. Now, there's advantages, right? It actually does some things a lot better than good old initd and files did. It has a lot more logic to it. It's quite a bit more complicated. I think the biggest complaint I've ever seen about it is that it breaks one of the main Unix tenets, which was do one thing, do it well, right? I mean, that's been a Unix tenet since the 60s. It definitely is not that. It does many, 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 many things. Now it does them pretty well, but a lot of people can have a problem with it. If you're like me and you grew up on init, it is a little bit of a learning curve to understand the differences between the two. I put a couple links in here and we'll share them out with everybody. There's some cheat sheets on if you know this command on init, this is how you do it. It's just in what you can see that's in the application. I will be the first to admit I am not an expert on System D at all. I know how to get around with it. I do not know the ins and outs of it, but even the research I did for this showed me some pretty cool things that I've never seen before.
We've had a couple of presentations on System D.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's obviously it's worth learning because we all have to know it now. But
It's like pie, you need to know it.
It's called Don't knock the eye chop. It's one of my favorites.
I didn't knock it, I said we need to know it.
I know. All right, so that was
It's
not what
the
I
pie
wanted to go to.
Emacs thing, but everything.
Why is that not showing? Oh yeah, it's running. Where is it? Right there. Oh, there we go. Okay, come back from there. So if you just type systemctl, this is the main program you use to interface with system. Like John said, there have been presentations on this by people I'm sure that do this a lot better than me. If you just type this in no arguments, you get a big old dump, like John. You get a big old dump of data. You can see the headers at the top, the unit, the load, the active status, and the description. This wraps, unfortunately, so it's a little hard to parse, but it's those 4 columns of data, okay? You'll also notice that everything on the left here is going to end in dot something. The dot something is the category of process that System D uses to identify what these resources are. Most of these are the top are automounts or devices. You can kind of ignore all these. This is just initialization of a lot of your hardware devices. That's going to happen, okay? We probably want to enable all that. All the TTYs. Okay. Now let's get down to the stuff we actually give a crap about. Stuff that ends in .mount. Sorry, .mount. This is a lot of mounting. Okay, so what is this stuff? Dev-huge pages .mount. Huge pages file system. There's a lot of virtual file systems in Linux, right?
Yeah.
This is to handle high memory situations, for example. The Fuse control file system, you guys know what Fuse is? What's Fuse stand for? File system in user space, right? So file systems are usually handled by kernel modules. Like if I want to be able to mount an NTFS file system, like you pull a drive out of your wife's Windows box because she crashed it yet again, you don't recover the data, you mount it in your Linux box, but you have to have NTFS supported the kernel to read the file system natively. That's got to be a kernel module. Well, if you're not running the box, there actually is a way to still bring in new file system modifications. It's through a thing called Fuse. It is a kernel module, and then you can read other kind of file systems. The only time I've ever actually used this is there's a SSH Fuse module.
SSHFS.
Yeah, SSHFS. It allows you to mount a remote file system through SSH as a local file system. So you can mount it and then you cd ls-grep set all those commands, and actually sends that command over SSH, but it's transparent to you. So that's kind of cool. That's through Fuse.
So if you're running a server, you may not want that.
You
copy all your
don't
data
need that
off.
one. Yeah, you probably don't need that one. So we're just looking at what everything is enabled right now. Okay, and you can see what the status is loaded and active. Right, all these other. So there is some stuff for our example here. There is some stuff that we're going to turn on and turn off. So your job again as the admin is to know what each one of these things is, what it does, why it's running. And if not, if you don't know, you need to research it and find out, okay? Some of these are a little more obvious than others. Let's look at this one, the cups-browsd.service. What does cups stand for, Rob? None of us.
Oh.
John knows.
Well,
the U is
not
Unix.
right now.
The common Unix
Unix.
print system, right? This replaced LPR or LPB back in the day. So this is my server living on some hosting software, so I'm not printing anything, for the love of God. So we're turning that one off. So cups-browsd.service. So how do we do that? Well, first, let's verify. Let's make this a little bit easier. Let's grep this for cups. We actually have a couple of instances. We have a .path, a .service, and a .socket. Down into a number of ways. The socket obviously is for communication, the scheduler. If we turn off the service though, it should kill them all. Standard syntax for that is system control, disable, cups. And this is, so you'll notice that this doesn't follow the normal Unix command line convention, which is application, options, arguments, right? It's usually program name and either a dash or a double dash if it's the long GNU name, right? Those are your options. And then arguments that you can pass, right? ls space dash al space pound. This doesn't follow that convention, which is just another thing that pisses me off about systemd. Why would you be different? Why just follow the normal convention, right? But the advantage is that because it doesn't do that, tab completion comes into play. So if I hit tab there a couple times, it'll fill in for me, which is kind of nice. It'll say, hey, the next thing you want to type is probably one of these. Oh my gosh, systemd, you're right. I want to type cups.service. And in fact, .service is the default. So if I even left that off, it would default to service. So I'm going to run that. And I get some output. Synchronizing state of cups service with sys5 in it, because we still live in a world where a lot of applications still assume a sys5 init state. Okay? If you haven't used sys5 init, it depends upon a couple of things. One being the presence of the etc init tab file, the initialization table file, but primarily the presence of the etc init.d and the etc rc.d run level directories. This is how you start and stop scripts in a sys5 init world. And there's still some old packages out there you can install that are going to drop scripts in etc init.d and expect them to run. So systemd knows that, and it will actually honor them for the time being. I'm sure there's some day in the future when we decided that that's going to be deprecated for forever, but it's still there. So you can still see some prompts that we'll talk about that. We get some symlinks removed. Because even in this, yeah, go ahead, John, please interrupt me.
Would you do the status cups now that you've disabled it?
Now that I'm disabled.
That's one of the things that bothers me is there's a bash command where you can skip a word to make this faster. Control W. What I'm getting at is, okay, so you just stopped it or whatever.
I disabled it.
Oftentimes, like,
I disabled it from starting. I didn't stop it. And that's what John had me run to show me that that's not the case. Because, so
right,
right.
so, yeah,
There's a difference between disable and stop.
right.
Right.
So, you know, oftentimes, like, you want to stop a service,
Mhm.
you configure a file, and then start it up again. So, with System 5, it was real easy, you know, you can do.
Oh yeah, service restart.
Yeah, or you just do stop and then hit the up arrow, go back to where you had stop, do Control W, erase that word, and put in start.
That's true. I mean,
Those kind of things.
so you can still do that. In fact, the service command that maybe you used, and Red Hat sort of made that popular as a wrapper around manually calling scripts in init.d. You know, service space Apache space restart.
Yeah,
right?
it's still pretty much there.
It actually still works. I have not used a distribution where that command does not work. It's just a wrapper around system control. Right? So it still lets you do that. And remember, that's kind of the nice thing about these distributions is what are they doing? They're taking software from all these different places on the net. They're putting it all together, mushing it all together. They're writing some nice little consistent wrapper scripts around it all, and they're going to see it. Here's your your unified operating system experience, right? Oh, I'm gonna start Apache, MySQL, and PHP on this. Those are written by 3 completely different groups each other. There's no law that says they have to start and stop stuff the same way. So that's what the distribution is doing for you. It's giving you those startup scripts that let you not worry about that, right? It's abstracting a layer from you. Hence the service command. Now the system control command, right? So what Mint has done as a distribution is they've written the scripts, the system D initialization scripts that handle all that calling for us. I'm just communicating with the system. I'm communicating with them via system. No different than we used to do with service. Or manually running scripts out of ND, which we did for years, right? So John's point is that even though I've disabled this, if I check the status, it's still running. And in fact, I can rerun my grep command. Hey, look at that, it's still running, because I didn't stop it. Now, if I remove box, it's not gonna run anymore. But that's kind of a hand-handed way to do it. So instead, I'll say, stop. There you go. I rerun my grep. Oh, socket is still running. I don't know why that's the case, but that's actually not, that's the same. Okay, the service is the same. So back to our slide. Okay, you want to run the system control command and look at all the services that are enabled. You need to understand why they're all enabled. If you don't know what it does, turn it off. If your users call and complain, turn it back on. But default to turn it on, right? System control is your friend. There's a couple links in here that'll teach you how to use it. There's all kinds of options for it. It really is a very comprehensive tool. And in fact, it's not just an init replacement, it's also a klogd replacement. It's a kernel logger replacement as well.
Isn't it also in some ways inetd? Or xinetd, remember that?
I do remember it. I haven't used xinetd in so long, I have no idea if that's the case or not. It's a good question though. Okay, step 4 of our 7-step Security 101 security system. It's really the next step version of the service audit, and it's a process audit. So this takes one lower step from what we just did. We looked at what services we're running. Now we're getting down to the nitty-gritty. We're going to see what processes are running. Let's type the right command. So I'm going to type this command. It's a little hard to see. It's PS, stands for list all processes, right? I'm going to pass it 3 arguments. A says show all processes, not just my user. U means show the user information with each process. X means show the full path of the executable for each process. PS has the 3rd longest man page you'll ever read, and you're like, it's got 1 million processes. You know, the first one. Else often and not. PS has the 3rd longest man page ever. It's got 1 million options, so you can make it explain anything. AUX is what I've typed. It's like muscle memory. I see it in my sleep. It's such an old command that'll even work if you don't put the dash in front of the options. That's how you know it's an old command. Another one I know that does that. So we're going to pipe that through more, and we're going to look at the outcome. Okay. First, look at the columns across the top. User PID, percent CPU, percent memory. These are all the default ones that PS spits out. You can, of course, configure all these. There's about 100 more you can show. The point is, you're getting information about the processes running on your system. This is vitally important for you as an admin to understand exactly what these processes do and why they are running on your system. Now you say, oh my God, how could I possibly do that? What the heck does kcompact D0? I don't know.
OOM Reaper.
Well, that's a good one. OOM Reaper. I can make up 4 reasons why that's right. I don't know. The saving grace though, the process, the far right hand column, if it's in brackets, it's a kernel thread. Okay? So this was created by the, what is it? K-thread init or K-thread exec system call, one of those 2. So it's a kernel thread. So you can essentially ignore these. Unless you're a kernel developer, you want to dig into this, right? You don't need to worry about these. They're not user level processes that map back to a service of some sort. Notice that they are all owned by root. Their PID is incremental from 1 up to whatever, right? There's some skippage in there.
There's possible ones that started and exited as part of the start process.
Sure, right, as the hardware is initialized. Okay, pin number 1 is always going to be some version of init. In the old days, it actually was a program called init. Now it's similar to systemd. Now we get into the good stuff. You'll notice that your pins probably jump a little bit. We're getting to the hundreds, right? Or maybe start to see other users other than root here. There's a syslog user. We also see some names that are outside of brackets. The very first one, libsystemd-journald. Any clues as to what that is?
Yep.
Yeah, it's part of systemd, right? I mean, anything under libsystemd is part of this big monolithic systemd service. This actually handles, the systemd itself has a journal it writes to because it logs all of this. This is kind of one of the original complaints about systemd actually, is that it has kind of a binary format for the logging that it contains. And people don't like that because we like text files in the Unix world. Okay.
That's why you'll see most distributions still running like syslog and rsyslog.
Yeah, in fact, this one is by default. Our syslog is by turn on by default, right? Okay. What do you think this one does? LVM ETAD-F. Any guesses?
Metadata, logical volume.
Yeah, LVM is logical volume manager, right? I don't know what ETAD means, but it's probably something to do with LVM, right? The logical volume manager. If you're not running LVM, or you don't plan on to, you can probably turn that off. Now the question, of course, is how do you do that? Well, I can kill the process. I have the PID right there, right? It's PID number 350. I can kill it. It's probably going to start when I restart the system, right?
You can do it now.
No, I'm not going to do it. So let's start just guessing. Oh, I'll be damned. There's a man page. This is the LVM metadata cache daemon. Cache LVM metadata. Okay. Let's say you don't want that to run. Just go down the man page a while. Where does this come from? See also all these different things, right? So now we can go back to that system control command. Grab it for LVM. So we have LVM related services that are running. We can disable these. Look, one is even called the metadata daemon. That's probably open. That'll turn that process on.
I'm sure you run LV display.
Well, I can do this and know that it's not.
What was that, John?
Okay.
I don't have. He said do LV display, make sure I don't actually have the LVMs. Before I start turning stuff off, I can do it with the F-H and show that I don't have the LVMs. Okay. And I'm going to hand this over to John for 1 second. Did you know you're going to be a guest speaker tonight for 5 minutes?
Nope.
Because I have to go to that.
Oh,
But there's more processes, John. I'll be with you in a second.
you know where it is?
Yeah.
Okay. So here's an interesting one. VirtualBox WQ. So there's some amount of kernel modules for the inter-process stuff between VirtualBox and Linux. So Linux knows it's running under VirtualBox. I will mention this, that the person who did the 2 systemd presentations for OLED was me. So if we want to revisit them, we can. We had a basics and a more one. So he's got MySQL running up here. You notice that VirtualBox has a service as well. Who knows what DNS mask is?
It's got a bug right now.
It does.
Several patches were just patched by Google.
Oh, well, good for
A lot
them.
of like,
They're not here at the moment. Oh, look. Failed to ban is running on this system.
what's its IP address? Maybe we could demo how you.
Well, it's in a VM running another system, so it's running under VirtualBox.
Yeah.
So if depending on the network he's on, it might be, it's natted in probably on his laptop. So the thing about the, one thing I like about running that status command with systemd is it actually gives you login information. So if it didn't start up properly, running this status will give you like the last few lines of logging information out of the journal to kind of report what it was doing as part of your the status when you're trying to run the program.
That is nice, and that's more consistent than the init scripts from back in the day. I mean,
Yeah.
they could do it, but they didn't all do
They
it.
were just sort of like,
Some of them would write just a slog, but not all of them.
Yeah, failed the ban runner.
Oh yeah, we're gonna talk about that.
Yeah, cool.
So again, the point is, I have no slide on this. If I can find it, where to go. Okay, we're running PSAUX, pipe it through more. Process with brackets or kernel threads. Note the owner, right? Make sure that the processes that are running as root should run as root. This isn't as much of a deal anymore, but it used to be a big issue. For example, SendMail used to be the default mail transport agent in Linux distributions. It used to run as root.
oh, I remember that.
Right? Which means that any sort of vulnerability that is exploited in SendMail that ended up with a shell, like someone doing a buffer overflow and getting an interactive shell in the system, would have the same security level as the user the process was running at, which used to be okay. Again, most applications handle this fine now, but who knows? You may have some weird. Just note the owner. Make sure if it's running as root, it actually should be running as root for a reason. Okay. Now, you as an admin, you should be able to answer these questions about every single process that's running on your server. Not as worried about the kernel thread ones, right? That's a different deal. But any user level process that's running on your server, you should know how to get on my box, what package did it come from, how does it start, what service starts it, what triggers it, why is it running, where does it log? John just talked about this. This is a big one. When it breaks, where do I look? Situations when you're like, oh, this is throwing an error. Oh, let's go look at the error log. Where's that? And then finally, we're going to talk about this in a minute. What ports, if any, does it list? This is a huge one from a network vulnerability standpoint. You have to know what ports your applications are listing. So that takes us to port monitoring. Okay.
Hey.
So back to that example I used long ago. Newbie sysadmin who had never done this before. She didn't check to see what doors she had left open to the big bad world, right? I mean, that's a way to think of a TCP port. I mean, think about, I always picture a server on the internet like a house. And every port that it's listing on, which equates to a service that you're offering, right? HTTP service, FTP service, SSH service, right? All these services that we're offering. There are different doors into your house. You come to my house, how do I know if you want a web page, or you want an SSH session, or you want a file transfer? And there's no laws here. We're the admin. We can do whatever we want. I know a guy that used to get a big kick out of running his SSH server on port 80, because that's the default web port. He thought that was really fun.
Is that Marsh?
Of course. But you can do that. We can do whatever we want. We're the admins, right? But there's default ports that come on this.
Oh, it was the Telnet port, but yeah.
Oh, you know what it is.
You can do multi.
So the point is, you have to be aware. You have to know. You should probably know what doors in your house you need to lock at night, right? Before I go to bed, I have 3 doors going into my house. I make sure everyone's locked, right? I know what the entrances are in my house. You have to do that too, as an admin. So let's do that. Netstat is a beautiful command. There are others that will show you the same thing. In fact, I'm sure there's probably somebody out there that says you shouldn't use Netstat. It's been deprecated for 100 years. You should use this instead. You're probably right. Did I mention that I'm old and change very slowly?
You know, Matt Marsh also used to run his systems on IPX on the internet because nobody could grab
Because
it.
who would ever guess that, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to run this command. If you take anything away from this talk tonight, remember this command, netstat-anp. Okay? Go ahead, Rob.
Well, you got --TCP.
I do.
Is that any different than putting like tuna P on
Put it well.
I just remember tuna P for.
Tuna P.
Yeah, P tuna,
Okay.
TCP, UDP.
Oh, as an option?
Not resolved in DNS.
Oh.
I guess I'm just wondering if there's a difference between dash TCP or just T.
TUNAP like that?
Yeah.
Oh, dude, that's awesome. There you go, that's what I learned tonight. No, you get the same thing.
Oh,
That's great. Actually, you get more than that because I wasn't showing UDP as well. Thought that might be a little too much, but that was great, thank you. 2 to P, I'm gonna have to flip that switch in my brain to remember that one. That's that 2 to P.
Sandwich.
Okay, so, like Rob said, we're passing 5 options in NetStat, and NetStat has a million options. The 5 options, the T says show me TCP connections, right? The U, UDP connections. Remember from your networking class, talk about the OSI model, right? The physical layer, the data link layer, the network layer, the transport layer. We're at the transport layer, we're at level 4 here, layer 4. And if layer 3 is IP, the transport layer on top of IP, we usually talk about 3 different kinds of transport protocols, I guess. TCP, the transmission control protocol, UDP, the user-gram data protocol, and ICMP, Internet Control Messaging Protocol. ICMP we know from ping, right? When you ping someone using ICMP. The other 2 are the main protocols that we use for the services that exist on the internet as we know it today. Of course, the primary one being HTTP, right? That is a TCP-based transport layer protocol. So the output of this command is very important for you to know and understand as an admin. This tells you not only what doors you have built into your house, but also who is actively using those doors and where they're coming from. So this is a big deal. You need to understand the output of this command. Probably more so, really, I'd say this is probably a little bit more
As good as PS.
than the PS command, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're pretty close, but this one is probably a little more important. Because this will probably tell you more immediate information about any sort of attack that's going on or unintended use of your system than PS will. So let's look at the breakdown. Okay, columns, protocol. Is this TCP version 4.6, UDP version 4.6? Receive queue and send queue, basically how much is queued up in there. This is only gonna be higher than 0 if there's active connections going on. Obviously, there's nobody's hitting the system right now, so nobody cares. Okay, this is an important one though. Local address. Again, what you're trying to find out is what doors do you have open to your house? And you're gonna see one of 3 things here. Okay? If it's IPv4, which is TCP, if you don't ever see a number, it defaults to 4. Blame BitServe for that. You're going to see 2 options here. Well, look, we're going to go with 3 options. There's always 3. You're going to see 3 options. You're going to see 0.0.0.0. You're going to see, which we see here. You're going to see 127.0.0.1, or you're going to see one that we actually don't see at the moment, which is whatever your IP address is. Let's assume that you have a static IP address on this host because you're going to run the world's next great web service, whatever it is. It's a combination of Twitter and Tinder and Pokemon. I'm coming up with it right now. It's going to be your public IP address, right? So I see that here because I don't have that enabled.
I choose you.
I choose you. Oh, that could
Swipe right, I
It's
choose
Tinder and
you.
Pokemon. I choose you. Let's talk about the first one. All zeros. Okay. This doesn't mean like it's not listing on any IP address. It means the opposite of that. It means it's listing on all IP addresses. Now you say, what the heck? I thought you could only have one IP address per server. You're wrong. Because you can have one IP address, you can have an IP address per physical network card, right? I can put a Linux box in place, put 2 NICs in it, have it exist on 2 networks, 2 different IP addresses. That's a pretty common configuration for a Linux box, right? Act as a router, a gateway, a firewall, Squid proxy server, what have you, 2 physical network cards. You can also have X number of IP aliases on an individual interface, okay? This means no matter what new IP address I add to this guy, that service is gonna listen on every single one of them. Now, what service is this? How do I know? Well, my format here is IP address : port number. I know this is a TCP protocol. It's port number 12345. What is 12345?
Sounds like some arbitrary made-up port.
It sounds like an arbitrary made-up port, Bob. Is that right? Yes, I made it up. Because what actual program is it? Well, this gives it away. It's SSH.
Right
I
you
did
are.
this already.
Right you are, Ken.
Right you are, kid. I actually did some preparation for this talk. I set this up already for you. So SSH, the default port for SSH is not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What is it? What is it, Rob?
22.
22, right? I changed that. I changed it to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This tells me, yep, you've got SSH. PID number 930, which is good for you to know as an admin. PID number 930 is running the SSHD program, and it's listing on every single IP address you're going to throw at this guy on port 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Now the foreign address here is only populated when there's an active connection from another address into you. And it's not going to be in state listed. The state here is defined, and we're just talking about TCP. Notice that the UDP ones don't have a state. Why is there not a state filled in for UDP? Because it's, because what?
They're in Florida.
Because they're in Florida. Because they're Washington, D.C., which isn't really a state. Because UDP is a stateless protocol, right? There is no such thing as a state of UDP. UDP is, I'm not going to tell you that. I taught a network class.
Oh, you can do that.
My UDP example was I took a bunch of purple paper and I said, here you go, here you go, here you go, here you go, here you go. I hope you're getting this, because I'm not looking. That's UDP, right? It's stateless. I have no idea what's going on. I hope you get it. TCP is, I'm going to give you these 3. Tell me when you got them.
Got it.
Okay, thanks. Here's 3 more. Tell me you got them.
Oh, hang on. I need it again.
Okay, here's that one again.
Thanks.
Okay, you ready for more?
Yep.
Okay, here's some more.
Thanks.
That's TCP. There you go. There's your college networking class right there. So TCP has, in this case, it's a state of listen. There are other states like FIN, wait, receive, SYN, synchronize, ACK, acknowledge. John was giving me acknowledges. I was sending him synchronize, right? So you'll see that on here. It is important for you to know this as an admin because there have been common attacks that have utilized the statefulness of TCP. In particular, a way to do a denial of service attack against a host is to open up lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of TCP connections to a service and then just let them sit. Because if I'm running a web server and you send me a TCP SYN packet, I'm going to send you an acknowledge packet, and I'm going to hold that port open for a little bit. I'm going to allocate a little bit of kernel memory to the thread that's going to watch that guy. And I'm going to say, wait for a response from him. Wait a couple minutes, 6 minutes, 7 minutes, whatever the default is, but wait, there's one coming, right? But then you never give me a response. And you open 5,000 more, 10,000 more, 50,000 more. And my entire existence as a server is now allocated to giving kernel threads, waiting for Rob to talk to me. Okay? That's a denial of service.
And so for distributed denial of service,
Yeah.
every one of these little active connections, you'll have a different IP for each
Right.
one.
So Rob sends me 10, you send me 50, you send me 100, you send me 1,000, and you're all in different countries. Right? That's the killer.
Are you getting, you need power?
For DDoS. No, it's the policy times that after 5 minutes. So if you see a ton of what are called wait states, if you see a lot of wait here, like a lot, like hundreds or thousands, you might be under denial of service. So it's important to understand, but the point of this is, okay, so back to our original thing, security. Know what processes are listening on what ports. Hey, SSHD is listing on every IP address on that port. Are you okay with that? ADR. I'm okay with that in this context. But you have to answer that for yourself as an admin. Is that okay? And I have an anecdote for this. Of course, I have an anecdote for this, right? So back in the day, I used to help my church do administration stuff. They had a Linux box. It was their gateway to the internet. So it had 2 physical NICs in it, right? One connected to their internal 192 private IP network. One connected to their Cox cable modem, right? It's down in Belgium. And they ran the Squid proxy server on there because they did content filtering to keep the bad stuff away from the good stuff, right? So this worked forever. And I inherited this from some guy who didn't know what he was doing. Fine, I looked, it's fine. It's like the one Linux box they had. I had a pretty easy job, which is good because I knew people. Well, he calls me up one day. He's like an admin at Peter Hewitt now. He calls me up one day on a Monday morning at 8:30. Oh, everybody's complaining that the network's slow. Can you log into Linux and figure out what's going on? Sure, log in. SSH in remotely, and it's slow. Oh my God, it's like 30 seconds to get a prompt. Every time I run a command, I look at the load's like 50. What is going on, right? So did SIDMP. It just connection to the SQUID process that's running on the server.
From the outside?
From the outside. Now, SQUID is designed to be connected from the inside. You make a connection to SQUID. You say, please give me this web page, Mr. SQUID. Mr. SQUID goes, all right. First, I'm going to check and see if you're asking for bad stuff, right? Checks against the little database. Oh, it's good. Okay. Get your connection in, right? It filters it, comes back to you. That's the point of a proxy server. But all these connections are coming from the outside. What the heck happened? Well, I looked, I saw the SQUID process, and guess what IP address it was listening on? 0.0.0.0. What the heck? Nothing changed. Nobody logged in this box in like 2 years.
Open proxy.
So I searched for the IP address of the church on the Googles. And the first hit that comes up, a brand new Usenet post that had just been posted the night before. Hey, here's a new list of open proxy servers. Somebody found it, and they advertised it to the world, and my gosh, there were connections from Singapore, and Amsterdam, and Israel, and you name it. Bogging this poor, like,
Was it doing its best to filter it all?
P3 500. Yeah, it was doing his damnedest.
You're not getting much.
So, okay, what could I do? What were my options? Here I am, essentially a production outage, right? Production outage. With these nice little church ladies. Production outage. What do? What are my options? Well, I could shut the box down and say no one enter for your day. I go back to work. That's an option, right? I could just say, you know, we need to buy a bigger server. This clearly isn't able to handle the load. I mean, that's a solution. It's a crappy solution, but it's a solution, right? What else can I do? I can firewall that port off, right? That's a legit solution. I don't need someone accessing this door. I just found out that I had a door in my house that I didn't know about, and there's a ton of people running in. I can go get the spare wood from my garage and start hammering over the door. Oh God, we gotta keep the tide out, right? Or I can just change this so that door never existed in the first place. Why do I want this door here if my whole job is just to prevent people from ever using it? How about I just take that out of the plans? So I went to the configuration for the SQUID proxy server, and I said, hey, only listen on IP 192.168.1.1. Restarted SQUID, and the load went. And all these poor, I'm sure, homeless refugee waifs in Singapore couldn't hit their open proxy server. And they cursed me in effigy, and they switched to the next one on the list. But I don't care, because I didn't manage those, right?
So IP table still had the open port listed, but
Sure.
it's not going to get to it anyway.
Right, and we'll get to that. And think about that, just keep that in mind, because that's a decision you have to make as an admin in that situation. Do you build a door and then protect the door, or do you just not build the door? I mean, they're both legitimate solutions, right? And there is a rationale for doing one or the other. In this case, I was like, this door shouldn't be here. I'm going to change the layout of this house. That's where my house metaphor breaks down. I'm going to change the layout of the house and say this door doesn't exist anymore. So know what these are. Know why those IP addresses are there. If it's the triple colon, this will be a 6, and that means every IPv6 address, right? But it's the same ID. Okay. If it's all zeros, it means this 127.0.0.1. What is that? Oh, it's MySQL. It's the database server. That means it's only listening on localhost, because that's the 127.0.0.1 IP, right? That's the localhost IP. That's okay, because that means no. I'm trying to go back to my house metaphor. That's a door that only goes to another internal room in your house. Kind of falling down in that metaphor.
It's a closet.
But yeah, it's a closet. There you go. That's a closet. Nobody can come in from the outside. That's an internal door only. That's fine. And in fact, that's required because a lot of these services talk to each other over network connections, even though they're on the same box. So it's okay that MySQL is listening. If MySQL is listening on the outside world, oh boy, you better have a good reason for it. Because wow, that is a vector for a denial of service attack. Plus, that's probably why your data is. So be careful with that one. Plus, the default port of 3306, everyone and their dog knows. So just be careful with that one.
Can I
I
ask you real quick?
Yeah.
Can you just run netstat without the terms so you can see how much of a mess it is?
Oh yeah, just netstat by itself. Yeah, because it shows pipes.
All the local file system stuff. And
Okay, so Network connectivity is such an ingrained part of the Unix operating system that processes talk to each other very commonly through a thing called Unix named pipes. It's not the same as TCP/IP connections, but from a network stack standpoint, it's treated very similarly in that NetStat will give you that output on the command line.
It's efficient.
You don't, yeah, it's super efficient, right? You can create your own, there's a cool command called NC. You can create your own name pipes or FIFO and LIFO, and you can do all kinds of communication to it. But it gives you this, all this crap you can pair up. So yeah, NetStat by itself, in fact, this is a tool on Windows as well, NetStat, pretty much unchanged. You can see on the left, the default, it says it's a Unix named pipe. That's why the word Unix is there. So we have to pass a few options to make it sane. Like Rob said, I used to do this and said, just show me TCP. Really, I mean, am I missing UDP? Yeah, UDP for most of the time. I mean, there's very few legit UDP services around nowadays. DNS is one. TFTP, the trivial file transfer protocol. What's the streaming video service?
RTSP.
RTSP, thank you. Real-time streaming protocol, that's UDP. Tim Berners-Lee said years ago, if you had to do it all over, he would have made HTTP, UDP. There's no reason for it to be TCP, it's just overhead. Whatever. Okay. Yeah, please.
How do you find out what the program does? I have a program called Master that's listening on my local host.
Awesome. Can I have it?
Sure. And I tried typing Master and it doesn't.
NAS.
Oh, right there. Well, okay, so it's PID 3028. So click on your prompt here and do a PS AUX and then pipe that to grep 3028. It's a great example. Okay, there's the full path to that command. The command is called master. The full path to it is user, lib64, postfix, master. I bet it was listening on port 25. Yeah, that's your mail. Postfix is a mail transport agent in MTA. So by default, it comes with your distribution. But the nice thing to notice that what IP address is listening on 127.0.0.1. So you're good. It's not listening on the outside port. But yeah, that's a good point. This is not obviously the full path to that command. So like that first one, SSHD. Oh, that's great. What actually is that? If I do a PSAUX and grep for 930, it'll give me that full path right there, user sn SSHD. Another way to do that is the proc directory. Remember proc, this is the virtual file system that tells you, this is the file system representation of kernel memory. If you ever had an interview at Google and then you get me as the interviewer and I ask you what proc is, use that sentence. The file system representation. So if I go to proc 930, because this is PID number 930, right? There's a whole bunch of files in here. One of them is called command line. Now I didn't here. Sorry.
Doesn't do a new line.
I got to throw a new line on there. There. Okay. There. So there's your command. Remember, every process running on your system gets a directory in proc. It's not a real directory, right? It's in memory. It's a fake directory. It's in memory. It's file system representation of kernel memory. Why do we do that? Because everything in Unix is a file. That's rule number one. Because I've used Unix for 30 years and I only know like 10 commands. But that's okay, because they're all file system manipulation commands. And if everything's a file, that's all I got to do. ls, cat, grep, set, off. That's all I need to know. Everything's fine.
Got it. When you cat out the command line, before you pipe it through TR.
Yep. TR what?
And then space, and then in single quotes, put a /0 for the null character. Another single quote space, and then
What am I replacing them?
we're replacing all the null characters after SSH.
Yeah.
Oh, because there's
Space?
spaces and stuff.
Yeah.
Like that. Oh, there you go. And then I quit. Yeah, that's very good.
It's,
That's a much more readable way, right? Yeah, it nuked the null between the options. TR is translate.
More longer, complex ones can be a bit confusing when they run together.
what's that?
A longer command line strings can be a bit
Yeah.
complex.
If you're not really paying attention, you might be searching for some
Sure.
binary that's SHD
Sure.
hyphen D.
You can also do that,
So,
which will give you, whoops, forgot the D. Oh, it didn't work. Oh, it must be just /n, right? Oh, delete, oh, sorry, I'm confused. I'm erasing new line, I should be adding. Rob's better. Oh, better. So yeah, 930 is SSH. Right? Just since we're talking about security here, right, as a security aside, this is a really good thing to remember. Remember that every process that's running on your system has a directory representation under /proc. This is important in this case, obviously, but also in a situation where perhaps you might doubt the validity of the output of the PS command. Because think about that, we as admins, we have to, at the end of the day, trust something, right? I mean, you can doubt, but at the end of the day, you gotta trust something. We usually trust PS. We trust PS to tell us actually what's.
And what's the first thing?
And what's the very, if you think, yeah, I'm an attacker. This is actually my last slide, but that's fine. We're skipping to my last slide.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're good, it's good. I'm the one that started it. If I'm an attacker, I'm gonna log into the system. What's the first thing I'm gonna try to do? Cover my tracks, right? I wanna install some program on your system that's gonna do what I want it to do. Maybe it's gonna mine Bitcoin. Maybe it's gonna DDoS Ellen DeGeneres' talk show website. If it's gonna upvote all of my videos on YouTube, it's probably a thing, I don't know. But I don't want you to know, because I want it to run forever. Well, I know you're as an admin, you're gonna run PS periodically and see what the heck's going on in your system, so I need to hide that. So I install a Trojan version of PS that shows you everything that's running on your system except my process, right? And there's two ways to find that. One, you can choose not to trust PS, and this is how you validate it. Because if I have a Trojan version of PS, I'm gonna see a discrepancy between the list of processes that it gives me and the processes that are listed in proc, right? Because proc is where it is. Think of every application you run on Linux that gives you information about the system. Uptime, DF, mount,
Netstat.
Netstat. You know what they're doing? They're just parsing stuff in proc. That's all it is. They're simple programs parsing information in proc. Look at the output of this command. I'm catting the file proc uptime. There's also a command in Unix called uptime. Oh, look at that. It's giving me the same data. The uptime command just gave it to me in a little more human readable format. Where did the uptime command get its data? From that first file that I catted. That's like every talk I give on Linux turns into a talk about proc. That's why proc is selected. Everything is in proc. Everything you ever want to know about this operating system is in proc. And how do you access it? Through all the tools that we learned when we were kids. Cat, set, awk, grep, ls, file. It's all there.
That's essentially your house.
That's your house. Everything else is just window dressing. Haha. Let's go back to my slides. Oops, press this out. Port monitoring. Okay, that's that AV. Pay attention to local address. Be wary of services that are splat. Right? Stuff 0.0.0.0. And there's your options. And this is really up to you as an admin. You can either choose to firewall them off, to brick over, do the 3-row thing, brick over the door. Or just don't listen on that port. Okay? Now, there's pros and cons. Me personally, I like to just pretend like the door never existed and log out. What are some reasons why you wouldn't want to? Why are some reasons why you want to leave the door there, but protect it really well? What do you think? Again, there's no right answer. Just what do you think? Is there a conceptual reason why that ever might be a good option?
You might want to use it.
You might want to use it someday, right? Maybe I'm not using it now, but in the future, I might want to tear those boards off and say, open for business, come on in. Yeah, that's a good one, right? I can think of one more. I don't want people coming in this door, but I want to log if they try. I want to see how many people are knocking on that door, right? Well, if I'm not listening on that door, I'll never. So you firewall it, and you set your firewall config to log if somebody tries. And then even if there's not a service running there, it'll log whenever you get a knock on that port.
Your famous IP tables script.
I really thought about bringing that up this time. I was like, I gotta let that one go. It's been like 15 years. Okay, step 6. We're almost done. There's only one more step. Securing SSH, secure shell daemon, right? I'm assuming that you're probably going to want to run SSH. I think of the systems that I've managed that have been directly connected to the internet, the vast majority of the time, they're only listening on 2 ports. They're listening on the web port, because they're Apache servers, and they're listening on whatever port I randomly assigned to SSH, right? Because I got to log in and actually edit them. So we're assuming you're on SSHD. Okay, that's fine. SSH stands for Secure Shell Service. So it should be good, right? Just install it. Well, we can make it a little more secure than the default. The first one is you can change what port it is. The default TCP port for SSH is 22. You're the admin, you can make that whatever you want. Up to 65,535, right? Go crazy. Now, you argue correctly, this is security by obscurity. Yep. It absolutely is.
It's another layer.
It's another layer. This isn't the only thing I'm going to do. But why wouldn't I do this? Why be the low-hanging fruit if it's easy to raise that branch up a little bit, right? Yes, if this is all you do to secure SSH, but why would you not do this? I saw these Stack Exchange comments when I was searching this. That's security by obscurity, just don't do it. Screw you. I'm absolutely going to do this. Why would I not? Okay, this one's pretty obvious. Permit root login, no. Why? I need to be root on this system because login is root. Why is it bad? Why is it bad if that's yes there?
You need to give them 2 layers to get through. First, they gotta find an account on the machine
Right.
to get logged into, and then they gotta figure out your root password.
Right. So it's a 2-step process now to become root. Right. What else?
Everybody knows root.
Everybody knows root, which means they can try to guess passwords.
Brute force.
Now, we're going to talk about this in a minute, but this doesn't come by default with OpenSSH or with SSH. So by default, SSH will happily listen forever while you try all the different passwords possible for root. Is this one? No. Is this one? No, 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 no. You as the admin don't even know. The default installation of SSH, I think it probably logs about it. You know, that's not true. It will log it by default. It'll set like incorrect password. Didn't do anything about it. Oh, look at that. Some guy tried 15,000 times last time to log in his root. Thank God I didn't guess it. How about we just disable that altogether, right? And we make the login, yeah, thank God I didn't get it. We make the login something weird, right? Not my first name. So yeah, don't allow root login over SSH. Log in as a normal user, su to root, or sudo to root, okay? RHOS. This is kind of a throwback. This is actually, I brought it up just because you can't actually turn this off. This is the default. In fact, this is the, actually this is not the default. It wasn't the default for Mint anyway. Permit root login was set to yes. I changed it to no. Ignore RHOS is by default set to yes, at least it was in this distribution. RHOS, it stands for remote host. This is a very, very old way to do passwordless authentication between 2 Unix systems. You used to be able to, so think about how old this is. This is back when we could actually trust individual IP addresses. So I knew Rob was always coming from this IP address. I was perfectly fine with him logging into my system as me. So I'd say any connection coming from that IP address, totally trusted as this user. And we shake our heads and laugh at this now because we can imagine a world where that used to be the thing. That used to be a thing. That was totally a thing. It's not anymore. So don't use RHOS file. And the name came from the fact that the precursor to SSH was RSH, which stood for remote shell. Notice there was no secure in that though, right? There was no encryption. There was nothing else. It was just plain text Unix to Unix communication. Okay? Permit empty passwords. No, just no. Okay, this is one I put a question mark on. Well, one of the nice things about SSH is it has authentication options other than passwords, right? Craig's looking puzzled. What's another authentication option for SSH other than passwords?
Wait. Drawing a blank right now.
John.
SSH keygen to generate a key.
Public-private key cryptography. Okay, so the initial sort of public implementation of this was the PGP application, which was written in 1977 by, what was his name? I don't know.
Phil Zimmerman.
Oh my God, that's right. How do you remember that? So it's an implementation of public-private key cryptography. The idea here being that I'm going to create a key pair. I want to encrypt something, right? Let's take a step back. Let's talk about encryption. I want to send secure messages with Rob. Okay? So that's easy to think. I've seen movies. I'm going to take my message. I'm going to encrypt it. And I'm going to send the encrypted version to Rob. He's going to decrypt it. How does that work, right? Well, if we both have the same key, then I can encrypt it with that key, and he can decrypt it with that key. That works. But how do I get the key to him? If I already have a secure way to get the key to him, why do I need to encrypt the messages from the beginning? Okay? So public-private key cryptography assumes that I don't have a secure way to talk to him. That any communication we have, just like right now, is going to heard by all of you. Okay? This is like, think radio. Think World War II Enigma machine radio waves, right? We're talking to our subs in the fleet. We're sending radio out there. Anybody can pick up radio to securely communicate with these folks. So we have the concept of a public and a private key. It's a key pair. They're connected to each other. But the private key, I keep private, that's why it's called private. The public key, I announce to the world. I put it on my business card. I rent a billboard and I put it up on the corner. You all have my public key. Okay? So now, if I want to, so there's two ways to implement this. Okay, one, I want to sign something. Because not only does Rob have to know that the data hasn't been changed in transit, but he's also got to know it came from me. This is radio, remember? And John is really good at mimicking my voice. So John's going to talk now, and he's going to sound like me, and Rob's going to think it's me. Well,
That's right.
I'm going to sign my message with my private key. So any of you with my public key can do this mathematical computation to verify, yep, this was signed by Adam's private key, which only Adam has. Okay? Now, I want to send encrypted communication to Rob. Like a private key pair. You guys all have the public key. But I also have Rob's public key. He did the same thing. He's got his own public-private key pair. He keeps the private key private. Everybody's got the public key. I want to send a message that only Rob can view. I'm going to encrypt it with Rob's public key. You've got it, you've got it, you've got it, you've got it. We can all encrypt messages with Rob's public key. But you know the only thing that can decrypt it? Rob's private key. So we can all shout it out to everybody. I'm going to encrypt this message and shout it out. You're all going to hear it, but it's all going to be garbage. He's going to be able to decrypt it and actually read it. Okay? That's the idea behind the public-private key pair. It allows for a communication and key exchange on an unsecure network when you don't have an initial secure channel set up ahead of time. This is what SSH does. SSH actually, go ahead.
Well, before you go off that page.
Oh, I wasn't, I was just hitting shift, so
Oh,
the screen didn't go to it. SSH does that same thing. So you initially set up a public-private key pair. Private, that's why it's called private. You take the public key and you put it on the server that you want to connect to. And you put it under the user account of the server you want to connect as. And you got to put it in the right place, it's got to be the right permissions. Read the SSH docs, you'll figure it out. But the point is, you create this key pair, private key here, keep it close to your chest. You're going to be able to log into. Then, when you authenticate, that same concept happens. You're encrypting something. There's a key exchange that happens. I've already gone way too far down into this, right? But the idea still holds. And so it validates that, yep, this is from the person I think it was using that same technology. And here we are. Once you get that set up, you can turn off passwords. You can just say, only allow connections from a key-based authentication scheme. Now, this is more secure, right? Because nobody gets your password. It's literally impossible, because we don't accept passwords anymore. The challenge with this is, you can only connect from that one system now, right? And this is why, for me, historically in my career, I've never turned this on, because I never know what system I'm in, right? I mean, you could set up like a Bastion host, you could set up like a jump host, whatever you want to call it. So you log into this one, and then you key-based log into here, right? That's entirely possible. I never went that route. So this is absolutely an extra layer of security. because it just removes the passwords from our world entirely. Well, not even optional, but it is kind of a pain, right? Security is always a trade-off between usability and security, right? And you as an admin, of course, have to find that happy medium so that your users will accept. We can all be as secure as possible. I imagine a lot of us have worked for companies where a security admin went a little too far this way and got a little draconian with the policies. And what happens then? The intrepid user decides that security, instead of being on their side, is actively out to prevent them from doing their jobs. And they'll do everything in their power to bypass it. And they feel righteous in doing it. And you start seeing sticky notes, passwords on sticky notes on their monitors. That's what you do to get a bad security policy. And the defense of that user, it's hard to argue. They're saying, just trying to do my job. And you say, well, your job is to maintain security. No, it's not. It's to type numbers into this database, right? It's to answer this phone. It's to do all this. That's when you're gonna have a bad security policy. So that's an option. It's up to you as what you do.
There's, typically I will also do things like allow groups and only put specific users in groups.
That's a good one.
To
Yep.
connect in.
That was, I actually looked at that one, right? You can utilize the Unix group hierarchy to say only users from this group can log in, sure. You can limit it by IP address. You can limit it by time of day. You can do all kinds of fun stuff. Built right into SSH. Now, there's another thing we're gonna talk about, fail to ban here. What time is it, John? How long?
It is 4 minutes to 8.
Okay, I feel like I've been talking for long. So fail to ban. The website is actually pretty good on the documentation, but just understand what it does. So one of the things that SSH does not do is it does not impose limits of any sort on connection attempts. So in that scenario we talked about at the beginning, somebody tries 15,000 times to guess what's password, it will dutifully log all 15,000 of those connection attempts to a log file. And that's it. It won't do anything else. Okay? So other people have wrote additional software that will fill that gap. Fail to ban is a very common one. And in fact, it's not SSH specific. It's often talked about in the same breath as SSH because that's one of the most common things we run on public IP addresses. But it actually can be utilized for any TCP service. And the way it works is you point it at a log file. Say, hey, watch this log file. If you see X number of failed authentication attempts in X number of minutes, ban that IP address for X number of hours. Pretty simple, right? Now, is this going to deter the most hardened, crazy hacker? No. IP addresses are too easy to fake. Tor exists for a reason, right? Is it going to help from a low-hanging fruit standpoint? Is this going to stop? Is this going to deter the kid who's running this on some, internet cafe in the Philippines, searching for a vulnerability? Yeah. Because his software is going to mark the system as down. Next thing, Marty's going to move on to the next one. Again,
It's mitigation of events.
I can't stress this enough. If someone wants to break into your system, it is absolutely going to happen. Think about your house right now. Craig, do you have metal bars on the windows of your house?
No.
Why not? Wouldn't that be more secure?
Yep.
Yep. Have you paid an armed guard to stand in front of your front door every night?
Well, we don't talk about it.
Wouldn't that
It's
be
water
secure if you did? No. Because everything we do, every decision we make is a trade-off between usability and cost. A lot of times right now would be prohibitively expensive. Armed guard, I might think about it, but it's expensive. You find that trade-off, right? We all do that in our lives. A great story from a teacher years ago who said he used to counsel generals of the base about security. He'd always ask the question, how secure do you want to be on? Scale of 0 to 100%, all 100% secure all the time. And to convince them that was impossible, right? And his example was all when you go outside, is there a chance you would get lightning? Well, sure. Okay, so do you wear a lightning rod on your head at all times to mitigate that? Well, no, that'd be crazy. Why? You say you want it to be 100% secure. It's impossible. It's gonna happen. But you as an admin, you have two jobs. One is to internalize that fact, realize it will happen. And if you haven't been broken into yet, it means one, you haven't used it. Or two, it's in your future. It will happen. Okay? And two, the second thing is how you react to it. Okay? Have a plan in place. Understand how this stuff works. Know the internal system. Know how to find the attacker. Know what's going on. Know how they got in. Right? These tools will help. Last slide. Oh, I lied, there's 2 more slides. Host-based firewall. We all know what firewalls are. Some of you may have actual firewalls, walls that say fire rated for 2 hours. That's where that came from. It's the stop, it's the block things. It's the block things, it's the log things. That's the home of the firewall, right? We all know what that is. We think about them being on like edge devices, on routers, et cetera, right? But you can have host-based firewalls as well. Back to our door example, right? We're protecting my door with firewall rules. This is 2017, which means we're using version 4 something of the Linux kernel. Ever since version 2.4 of the Linux kernel, which is a long time ago, the default application to manipulate firewall rules on the Linux kernel is called IP tables. It's a relatively complex system because it's, now notice I didn't say complicated. There's a difference between complex and complicated. Complicated means things happen for no apparent reason. Complex means there's a lot of moving parts. IP tables actually make sense. If you dig into it and learn it, it's not just arbitrary, oh, I can do that. Well, I always just do that, I click here. That's not IP tables. But it does have a lot of moving parts, so it's complex. You can create some pretty funky firewall rules later.
You've seen mine.
Yeah, they get pretty crazy. So there have been a lot of attempts over the years to sort of make this easier. There's GUIs available. There's a really cool web-based GUI called Webmin that if all this admin stuff freaks you out, take a look at Webmin. It's a distribution agnostic web-based system admin tool that actually is pretty cool. It has an IP table model. Okay? The challenge though, of course, and you've all used Unix for a while, you know the beauty of the command line is even though it's difficult to learn and master because there's so many options, command line that just aren't replicated in GUI because a GUI assumes that there's a limited subset of things you're going to pick from. Command line is virtually infinite, right? Same with your firewall rules. Your specific firewall config could be the only person on the planet that has that exact firewall config, right? And no GUI will ever be able to represent that, ever. So we have a command line. However, there has been a lot of work towards making this as simple as possible. One of the ones that actually comes with a lot of distributions now is called UFW, Universal Firewall. It is just a front end to IP tables, that's all it is. You don't need to use it. You can learn IP tables, you can go crazy, right? UFW actually makes it pretty easy. In fact, it came with my Mint distribution by default. Now, it wasn't enabled by default. It is something you have to turn on. And I mean, think about it from the distribution standpoint. They don't want to turn on firewalls by default because somebody installs a distribution, they try to do something with it, they're blocked. They're like, done, install Red Hat, right? So I understand from a consumer level standpoint why they don't want to do that. But if you go to, let's see, I remember how to do this. Oh, no, that wasn't it. Okay.
That's cool.
It actually gets its own directory because it's important. Etsy UFW. There's UFW.conf file. Of course, there is. The very first line there that's not coming out. Enabled equals. This was defaulted to no, so I had to change this to yes. Okay. This is now turned on. And then, of course, there's a million different files, right? The reason that these applications don't have just a single file anymore is because the idea is that if I have an update to the package or maybe an add-on to the package that utilizes this, it's very difficult for an automated package management system to modify a file that's been human maintained. That's a good way to just overwrite changes, right? So rather than that, you'll have a config file that'll say, please don't edit this file. Instead, edit the files in this directory, and then everything will be copacetic, right? So, let's see an example of this. Okay, we saw that. All right, so, see, I did this already to make sure I should have undone it so I can show you all. Let's look at some default. Let's look at some default stuff. First, I'm going to look at, I looked at ufw.conf, that was very small. Okay, I'm going to look at user rules. Sorry, that's a little more complex than I wanted. I was looking at, is it before? No, this gets pretty complicated. Okay. Well, there's somewhere in here. What we're looking at is there's 3 default, and they're called tables, hence the name IP tables. Okay. So think of yourself as you're the kernel inside your system. Okay. The path out to the world is output. The path into you is input. Those are two tables, okay? And the path between the two is called forward. So those are the three default tables. Now, if I'm just a host-based system, I only care about these two, what I send out and what I allow in. The only time you really care about the forward rule is if your box is acting as a forwarding server, okay? And that's a very common scenario. Go back to my church scenario, right? One Linux box, two NICs, private network, public network, routing packets between the two and doing some filtering on. The forward rule is enabled, but most of the time it's just input out. You can set what the default policy is on your firewall here on every one of those tables to be accept or deny. So it's really how you want to approach it as an admin. It's sort of the, are you optimistic or pessimistic? And you can have two firewalls that accomplish exactly the same thing, but look very different because one of them defaults to deny and one of them defaults to accept. The end result could be the same, but they're just written differently. Right? So on the servers that I used to manage, we would default to deny. By default, deny everything. Specifically on the input table. Used to be called chains. Used to be called IP chains. I still think of them as chains too, especially when I would do this, chains. So input, by default, block everything. And then specifically define the stuff you want to open up, right? Output, less important, right? Because we want to get out. What you commonly see on the output, you may block connections to certain ranges of IPs, right? China is a common one. China gets a lot of crap in this case because a lot of attacks come from. So it's not too uncommon to block all outbound attacks to China. Somebody breaks into my system, is going to talk to a botnet running out of box in China. I'm going to block it, right? Because I just block it. You can also try blocking access to certain ports. This one's a little dicey because as we saw earlier, you're the admin. You can make port whatever you want. But some services do run on certain ports. For example, if we're back talking about botnets are normally controlled by IRC commands. The default TCP port for IRC is 6667. So you could, by default, block outbound ports. Is that going to be like your be-all, end-all security? No, but it might help. So UFW gives you a pretty easy interface to IP tables. I'm going to show you what the IP tables output looks like because it's relatively complex. Okay. In fact, see, it still says chain. So, okay, this is a lot of text. Let's parse this in small chunks, right? First, we have input, forward, and output. There's our three. And where it gets complex is you as an admin can create user-defined ones as well, like to infinity, so it gets a little complex. And in fact, fail to ban has done that with a number of these, so this gets a little complex. But let's forget that for a second. Let's just look at some simple ones, what the syntax looks like. So we want to say, in fact, I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to grep this so we can see what's going on here. I'm just going to grep it for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I want you to look at the last line. This is actually in the input table, and it says we're accepting TCP connections to this, from this, destination ports 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. This allows TCP connections from the external. So if I didn't do that, you can create this manually with the IP tables command. Remember, kernel or network packet filtering is handled at the kernel level on Linux. There's not like some service running. It's not like on Windows where there's like a firewall process running. It's not a thing in Linux. The kernel does that. The kernel is the only thing that's allowed from a security standpoint to manipulate and monitor packets. So what you do is you manipulate the kernel's behavior via the IP tables. And it's not like you save to a file and then have to rerun a command. You run the IP tables command, it does it immediately. The rule is implemented, boom. And then you reboot the box and the rule has gone away. It's not permanent. So you have to put in a start file that runs every time you shut it off.
You think it's still technically feasible to run the firewall in a stop state in a way that you can actually have the system running in a run level where you're not doing anything, but the packets are still moving?
Okay.
Can you translate the question?
Yes, that's a good one, because that's happened before. Okay, so John's example was, if your system is in a stop state,
It's not powered off.
it's not powered off, but the user's space is not running. You don't see this much anymore.
You don't, I haven't seen it in a long
You don't see
time.
this much anymore because we have advanced power management now.
Yes.
If you issue the shutdown, so some of you know.
Or if you-
look at it again.
Well, with, in
So what
Nick,
we
you
had to
can
do back
turn
in
it
the
to
day-
not do the power off.
When we issue the shutdown command, remember like Windows 95, you do the power off and it would say it's now safe to turn off your computer. Remember those days, right? The box is still running. The operating system is still running, but it's in a safe shutdown mode. And back in the bad old days before computers handled advanced power management, that was the same thing with Unix computers. You'd say shutdown, and it would get all the way down and say shutdown completely. Power supply fan still running, CPU fan still running, kernel still running, kernel rules are still in place. It's still forwarding packets. It's still blocking packets. It's not reading your hard drive. It's not logging anything, right? But those rules are still in place. Yeah, doesn't happen much anymore.
No.
And it comes from the term that stop command comes from. Actually, on Solaris, if you ever seen the Solaris keyboard, there's a stop key. You can hit stop. It literally breaks the kernel. It stops immediately. Stops. It freezes everything that's going on in the system right there. That's what it came from. So yes, so that shows that it's the kernel doing that. It's still in memory. It's still doing it. So check out Delta Band. It's cool. It works with not just SSH, right? It works with other applications. This was a command. These are the files to look at. And then this is actually the command I typed. UFW is a command by itself. I typed UFW space allow space 12345/TCP, and that turned on that firewall. Could I have done the whole IP tables command? Sure. It's just a front end to IP tables.
I'm sure there's options that you have to specify interface and
Yeah,
or IP.
it's just a much more sane
Yeah.
kind of front end. And there's GUIs for it too, if that's your thing. Okay, last one. Wrong. I'll talk about it. And I threw a lot of stuff in this slide because I knew by this time you'd all be so sick of hearing my voice. Other things to look at, okay? SE Linux versus AppArmor versus SMAC.
Wish
All right.
Aaron was here for the AppArmor discussion.
SE Linux, security enhanced Linux. Linux from the NSA. It is 2001. The National Security Agency made a Linux kernel model that implemented policy-based security at the kernel level. So all the stuff we've been talking about so far, I guess up until IP tables, has all been user space stuff, right? This process is running here, this application is running here, this port is open here. It's all user space stuff. The kernel, of course, lives above it. So if I'm a smart hacker and I really want to mess with your system, I'm going to break them up in your kernel. Because at the end of the day, we all have to trust our kernel, right? And the kernel's the one that's ultimately in control. So these are attempts to address kernel security level. And in fact, there's a whole litany of these, I was going to say applications, but it's really modules that fit under what's called the LMS, the Linux, LSM, Linux Security Module, something like that. There's a whole category of these. It's not just these three, there's half a dozen more. Basically, when these started coming out, and Linus, who of course still sort of reigned supreme over this kernel, said, this is all great, I'm glad you guys are doing it. I don't want to be part of it. We're going to module it, make it a module. Don't stop submitting code. He told us the NSA, stop submitting code to me to like overtake the Linux kernel. No. Do it as module all day long. Okay? These are all implemented as kernel modules. SE Linux is kind of the grandfather of them all, and it takes an enormous amount of crap because it is enormously complicated. You can very much tell that it was created by the government. Okay? Now, that doesn't mean to say that it does not have value. It absolutely does. It's been around a long time. Do I recommend that a normal admin use it? I really can't.
But you should be at least know about it.
You need to be
and
aware
use
of it.
how it works.
There's 3 modes to SE Linux. There's enforcing, there's,
Permissible.
and there's more.
Disabled.
Well, disabled, okay.
Yeah.
Enforcing, permissible, disabled. John and I's long running joke was, what's the first thing you do after you install a Linux box? Disable SE Linux and reboot. So take a look at it. I'm going to be honest, I have zero familiarity with it. AppArmor falls in that same category. But whereas SE Linux is a kernel-based policy management from kind of the kernel standpoint, AppArmor is more from the application standpoint. The goal of AppArmor is to create these separation of access and separation of processes between applications. So it makes sense if you go with what I said before, which was that you as an admin, you're going to have a security event. It's going to happen. But what AppArmor does is try to mitigate the damage. You know, it's to use a forced analogy. Actual firewall is. What's an actual firewall? It's a wall that's supposed to stop fire, right? We have those because in buildings, we assume fire is going to happen. We just want to minimize the damage, so we put walls up. Yeah, I'm going to lose this room, but these are all firewalls, so I'll just lose this room, right? That's kind of the idea behind AppArmor. I think one of the reasons that this hasn't become kind of the de facto is that a very common situation now is to have individual servers running individual applications. This was all created when you had one server, and it was your web server, and your database server, and your DNS server. The server was on your local network, right? And it was your Quake server on weekends when you wanted to play your kid, and then your Minecraft. Everything all in one box, right? We don't do that anymore. Now we stand up Docker instances, or we do VMs, you know, inside one parent shell, or whatever the terminology is. And it's like one application per box now. So if the whole point of AppArmor is to protect the other applications from getting forked, if this application gets compromised, how about I just only run that one application on my operating system? Then if it gets compromised, because it's the only application on that box. So it's a little bit less important. SMAC is another one. There's a link in there to a really good white paper on how that works. What do you use to describe it, Rob? The permissions-based model, what did you say?
Mandatory access controls.
That's the MA. Mandatory access controls. That's in general the category of things we're talking about, is access controls implemented at like a process level, modified by policies. Okay. So there's a number of them. And there's more than this, but there's 4 or 5 more that I found. Okay, the next one to look at is to talk about is intrusion detection systems. Again, under the operation assumption that you're going to get attacked, it's going to happen, right? We have the firewall in place, or we're logging who knocks on our door. You can go one step further, and you can actually look at the network traffic, and you can say, that looks suspicious. How do you know? Well, there's these giant databases that people have put together of suspicious-looking traffic, and it literally fingerprints them, right? Does this traffic match something I have in my database? Yep, looks bad. Block that IP for now, right?
So why would you not just go ahead and take the extra step and put an IPS system in place versus just the IDS?
Put an IPS system in place.
Prevention
Intrusion prevention system.
It's that next step.
Oh, it's, yeah, do something.
IPS
right?
is, I saw something.
It's those-
IPS is do something.
It's those commercials where that guy says, well, I'm a security monitor, not a security guard. And he's like, hey, a robbery's going on. Yeah. Yeah.
I just never seen the point to an IPS.
Well, okay, from my admittedly limited experience in this, it's because IDSs in general tend to get a lot of false positives. And if you're going to be implementing policy based on false positives, you're going to have a lot of headaches. So it's more of, I always liken an IDS to a big dog that barks in the middle of the night. You're not going to ignore it, but you're not going to immediately pick your shotgun and just start pumping rounds in the kitchen because the dog's barking, right? Probably not. You're going to say, what is it, boy? What's going on? You're going to investigate. It's a way to notify you. It's an elevation to the human, right? That's how I always treated our IDSs when I used them. It was a red flashing light. Why is that light flash there? I should probably go investigate. But there was no action taken because of it. It's not just the fingerprint-based systems. There's also heuristic-based systems that will try to do their best guess. Hey, this doesn't look like anything I've seen before, but it smells kind of sketchy. Squid is a very common, not squid, snort. Sorry, snort. I used to know that stuff. It's a very common one that's been around for a long, long time. It's an open source intrusion detection system. So I'll take 3 times. Okay, finally, Again, with the idea that you're going to get broken into, it's going to happen. The question is, what do you do about it? And how quickly do you know? And you get caught by the Target credit card hack from a couple years ago. You get that nice letter from Target saying, "We're really sorry, but we probably lost your credit card." The big problem with that hack was it took them 9 months to figure it out. Somebody had access to their internal systems. It's not good.
Through the
It's not like
HVAC contract.
if it was 9 hours, fine, right? 9 months, oh my God. Okay, so the way to mitigate that is through file integrity monitoring. Why? Because everything in Unix is hot. An intruder is going to log in my system. He's going to modify files. Otherwise, what's he doing? What's the point? He's going to modify files of some sort. So if you're doing regular snapshotting of your file system and you're comparing it to new snapshots you're creating and you're flagging when things change that shouldn't, you'll find out when you get broken. Now this is tricky because this isn't just install it, walk away, and I'm good, right? This takes maintenance because you've got to know, you've got to tell it what files are okay to change and which aren't.
And when they change, what to do.
And what to do. This is hard. This is the hardest one to do. But it's pretty important because it's kind of your last line of defense. This will tell you when somebody's messed around with it, right? I put a couple of them up there. I personally use Tripwire. OSSec is pretty cool. I was reading about this. It looks very similar. Okay. And the question really comes down to this one. What happens when a system is broken into? What are these characteristics we're looking for, right? Think about that. A rootkit is a common thing that happens when a box gets broken into. Someone installs a rootkit, which means it's probably Trojan versions of some monitoring tools, PS, maybe LS if they're trying to hide files, right? They probably install some sort of a backdoor, which means there's a process running, listening on a port that wasn't there before. Or perhaps it's a Trojan version of SSH that works exactly the same way that SSH does before, except it also accepts logins from foobar with no password, right? How will you know that? Well, file integrity monitoring. You'll know that because you realize that the checksum between your SSHD file changed in a 24-hour period, and you didn't do get upgrades overhead, so you know something's screwed, right? So this is an important one because you have to know what the attack vectors look like. You got to know what a bad system looks like. What could possibly, where do I look? John calls me up and says, "Hey, I think this box got broken into. Can you log in and look?" What am I looking? I'm looking for the access log. I'm looking for the bash history in root's home directory. Yeah, you can erase it if you're covering your tracks. Maybe they didn't. It's worth looking into, right?
What binaries have changed?
What binaries have changed? I'm going to look in the temp directory for anything goofy. I'm going to do a PSAUX and see if I understand every single process
the
running.
sockets to see what
I'm going to do
might be.
netstat to see if there's anything weird listening. I'm going to do SOUP. File integrity monitoring is actually built into your package management tools. You can pass the -V option to RPM to do package verification because the checksum of every binary that comes in an RPM package is stored in the RPM. So it'll do a verification. It'll say, here's the files that have changed in that package since you installed it. Holy crap, NPS is different. What? Something's screwy, right? Oh, it's just a config file? Oh, no big deal, I changed that, right?
Typically gets all the configs that.
Yeah, it's your Apache config file, because that came with
And
the
don't wait to do it. Just run it now and take a look at
Run
it.
it now, see what happens. RPM space -capital VA, run it under Red Hat-based systems. It'll verify every single package in your system. Go through and see what.
You might want to pipe it to output to a file.
Output to the file, remove all the config files, and see what's left. Maybe there's something you should worry about. So just understand, what's the point? Why are people doing this? They're installing bots, right? They're mining crypto. All of a sudden your load is 10 all the time. Oh crap, something's running on my system, right? Understand what the point of this is. Why does somebody want to break your system? So you know what to look for. Because it absolutely is going to happen. It will. For sure. Questions? You've all been very good about interrupting me. Because I'll just keep talking. That's me. We'll show the slides. Feel free to continue the discussion on the list. I got a lot of really good ideas when I first put this idea out there, what to talk about. So it was really fun. Going through some of the stuff, I hadn't looked at this stuff in a while. I never actually used UFW before. That was kind of cool.
Yeah, that looks interesting.
That was nice. Yeah, it was really simple. It was just very easy.
It's not interesting to see about the post-routing part of the UFW.
Yeah, failed to ban is pretty nice too. I've used that years ago, but that's not forever. That was pretty cool.
There was a question recently too on the list, and I mentioned port knocking.
Port knocking, right? Okay, I didn't talk about that.
William did that presentation a long time ago.
Okay, so we'll end on this.
One with the subliminal slides.
I think that's what he did. That, yeah.
Right on Dodge, he had the slideshow, right?
Yeah.
And then like, right in the middle of his talk, the slide would change and say, I want a beer. I remember that.
Yeah.
That's on there.
Whose slide? Who was that?
I think it was William, wasn't it? Or Bill?
I haven't seen, he left not much
Yeah,
longer.
he's not in town anymore.
That's fantastic. Okay, so we'll end this. Port knocking is the idea that, so we talked about changing the default port like SSH to 22 to 1 2 provider. Security by security, sure. Well, this takes it one step further. And this says, we're not even gonna set the default port on this application until a request is made on a different port. And so this is sort of like, think about this like it's the password to a speakeasy. You're gonna go up to the door, you're gonna knock, and they're gonna say, what's the password? And you're gonna say New England clam chowder. And they go, that's right. Go to the 4th door on the left. I'll go open it for you. Right? That's what this is. It literally, the service won't start up and listen on that port until you make an initial connection and authenticate on this other port. So you have to knock on the door and they accept you, and it'll start.
And it's only open for a short time.
And it's also only open for short time. That's a little too paranoid for me, but it's kind of cool. You do that, right? That's okay. That's kind of neat. Cool. Active monitoring Nmap. If you haven't used Nmap before, read that page. It's amazing.
I was running that today.
There you go. And Wireshark. Nmap and Wireshark are your friends.
At 2.
Take a look at those, right? Remember what the heck's going on in your network. Fire up Wireshark and just watch. Do the follow TCP stream thing. It's really cool. You can see HTTP connections. We did this at work the other day. We found out that when you make a request to Google.com internally from the office, you get a whole mess of HTTP headers you don't get on the outside. And one of them actually gives you the host name of the server that answered your request.
Oh,
And we just kept refreshing. It was like, yeah, we just keep getting servers in our data center every single time. We just thought that was really cool.
okay.
All right.
Thanks, Adam.
Thanks all. Bye.